Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. Today I'm back with another stew recipe. Like I said in last week's video, I'm making 4 stew recipes to share with you all through February and March, and last week I made a beetroot and lentil bourguignon, so if you missed that I'll leave it down below. And today I'm gonna make what I like to call the golden stew, and I'm calling it this partly because it has a beautiful golden hue to it, but also because it's really delicious and I think you're really gonna like it. The main ingredients in it are potatoes, butter beans and chickpeas, so it has mainly really affordable ingredients, and other than that it has lots of flavor from spices and herbs, and I'm really excited to share it with you, so I think we should just get right into it. To get started with the stew, I'm grabbing some potatoes and I'm cubing them up. And for this recipe, I'm doing something a little bit different. So I'm gonna cube the potatoes up and then I'm gonna roast them in the oven. And then when the stew has cooked towards the end, I add the potatoes in. And this allows the potatoes to keep their shape and be a bit more chewy and have more flavor than if I just added them in earlier. So what I do is I pop them on a tray and I drizzle them with a little bit of olive oil, and then I add some salt and some black pepper as well, and then I just mix it all up really well to coat the potato cubes, and then I pop them in the oven and roast for about 20 minutes or so until they're golden and have a nice chew texture. And while the potatoes are roasting away in the oven, I get started on the stew itself. So I peel and slice some red onions into half moons. And then I'm also going to slice up quite a few cloves of garlic. I love garlic, I hope you do too. If you don't, you can leave it out, but I think it's such a great aromatic for stews. So I just slice them quite roughly, but if you don't like very strong taste of garlic in your mouth, you can of course mince it as well. And then I bring this over to the hob and I put some coconut oil into my Dutch oven, but you could use a large pot as well. And then I saute the onions and garlic in there with a pinch of salt. And throughout cooking this stew, I like to season every time I add something new to the pot. But while the onion is toasting away on the oven, I'm gonna take a bunch of parsley and I'm gonna remove the leaves from the stems because we're gonna put them into the stew at different times. So first of all, I just chop out the stems so that they're quite fine pieces. And then I'm also going to prepare some spices. So here I have dried thyme, dried rosemary, as well as coriander seed. And I pop them into a mortar and pestle and I crush them up and make sure they're broken up and they're really fragrant. Then I go ahead and I add these spices into the pot with the onions and garlic. And I also add in a pinch of chili flakes. I used some smoked ones, but you can use any you like. And then I saute this along with the onions for a couple more minutes until it's really fragrant. And in the meantime, I drain a can or a carton of chickpeas and another one of butter beans. But of course you could use dried beans. Just make sure to cook them before you add them to the stew. And I rinse the beans off and they're ready to go into the stew in a little minute. But first I'm adding in some tomato puree to the pot, and on top of the tomato puree I am sprinkling in some turmeric, and I used ground turmeric, but you could use fresh if you prefer. And then I mix that through the onions to make sure all the flavors are well combined and dispersed before adding my beans. And I actually saute the beans in the spices for a little while with some salt and pepper for seasoning. And while I mix the beans with the spices, I also sort of mash a few of them. I leave most of them intact, but I like this sort of chunkier, half mashed, half whole beans. And then I add in my parsley stems and some water, as well as some vegetable stock powder, but you could also use liquid stock if you have that on hand. And I give it a good mix and I turn up the heat to bring the stew to a boil. And once it's boiling, I turn the heat down again to a simmer, and I sort of half cover the Dutch oven so that it can reduce and cook down and the flavors become really, really strong. And when the potatoes are done, that will happen at some point while your stew is cooking. I just set it aside while I chop up the parsley leaves, and I do it quite roughly so that you will see some nice bits of green in the stew at the end. So once the stew's been simmering for about half an hour, I add my cubed and baked potatoes. At this stage, I'm also adding in my chopped up parsley leaves, but don't forget to put some aside to use for garnish. And then I just give it all a very good mix to combine it, and you can see this lovely golden color now, and I also like the pop of green that the parsley gives. Then I taste it to see if I need to season, but I was good for this time. Just make sure you taste and season your food, and it's ready to serve. I wish this was smell-o-vision because this stew does really smell fragrant and really lovely, and I like to serve it in deep dishes and then top it off with a spoonful of vegan yogurt. I'm using quite a full-fat kind of yogurt here, and then I'm also topping it with some pickled red onions, and I'll leave a link in the description box to a recipe of how to make this. It's really easy and lots of you have already tried it. Thank you for sharing with me. And then I just sprinkle some parsley on top, and this is the final dish. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that you will try out my recipe. This is a real keeper, I promise. And yeah, many thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care. Bye.